The troubles the would-be murderers had getting rid of the old drunk, after they conned him into signing less than $2,000 worth of insurance papers, are outright black comedy, and it led to quadruple execution of 4 men. The plot was conceived over a round of drinks. One afternoon in July 1932, Francis Pasqua, Daniel Kriesberg and Tony Marino sat in Marino's eponymous speakeasy and raised their glasses, sealing their complicity, figuring the job was already half finished. How difficult could it be to push Michael Malloy to drink himself to death? Every morning the old man showed up at Marino's place in the Bronx and requested another mornin's morning, if you don't mind, in his muddled brogue. Hours later he would pass out on the floor. For a while Marino had let Malloy drink on credit, but he no longer paid his tabs. Business, the saloonkeeper confided to Pasqua and Kriesberg. Pasqua, 24, an undertaker by trade, eyed Malloy's sloping figure, the glass of whiskey hoisted to his slack mouth. No one knew much about him, not even, it seemed, Malloy himself, other than that he had come from Ireland. He had no friends or family, no definitive date of birth, no apparent trade or vocation beyond the occasional odd job sweeping alleys or collecting garbage, happy to be paid in alcohol instead of money. He was just part of the flotsam and jetsam, in the swift current of underworld speakeasy life. Those no longer responsible derelicts who stumble through the last days of their lives in a continual haze of Bowery smoke. "Why don't you take out insurance on Malloy?" Pasqua asked Marino. "I can take care of the rest." Marino paused. Pasqua knew he'd pulled off such a scheme once before. The prior year, Marino, 27, had befriended a homeless woman named Mabel Carson and convinced her to take out a $2,000 life insurance policy, naming him as the beneficiary. One frigid night he force-fed her alcohol, stripped off her clothing, doused the sheets and mattress with ice water, and pushed the bed beneath an open window. The medical examiner listed the cause of death as bronchial pneumonia, and Marino collected the money without incident. The gang set into motion a macabre chain of events that would earn Michael Malloy cult immortality by proving him nearly immortal. Pasqua offered to do the legwork, paying an unnamed acquaintance to accompany him to meetings with insurance agents. This acquaintance called himself Nicholas Malloy and gave his occupation as florist, a detail that one of Pasqua's colleagues in the funeral business was willing to verify. It took Pasqua 5 months to secure 3 policies, all offering double indemnity on Nicholas Malloy's life, 2 with Prudential Life Insurance Company and 1 with Metropolitan Life Insurance Company. Pasqua recruited Joseph Murphy, a bartender at Marino's, to identify the deceased as Michael Malloy and claim to be his next of kin and beneficiary. If all went as planned, Pasqua and his cohorts would split $3,576 after Michael Malloy died as uneventfully and anonymously as he had lived. The murder trust now included a few other Marino's regulars, including petty criminals John McNally and Edward Tinner Smith, Tough Tony Bostone and his slavish sidekick, Joseph Muglione. One night in December 1932 they all gathered at the speakeasy to commence the killing of Michael Malloy. To Malloy's undisguised delight, Tony Marino granted him an open-ended tab, saying competition from other saloons had forced him to ease the rules. No sooner did Malloy down a shot than Marino refilled his glass. Malloy had been a hard drinker all his life, one witness said, and he drank on and on. He drank until Marino's arm tired from holding the bottle. Remarkably, his breathing remained steady. His skin retained its normally ruddy tinge. Finally, he dragged a grungy sleeve across his mouth, thanked his host for the hospitality, and said he'd be back soon. Within 24 hours, he was. Malloy followed this pattern for 3 days, pausing only long enough to eat a complimentary sardine sandwich. Marino and his accomplices were at a loss. Maybe, they hoped, Malloy would choke on his own vomit or fall and slam his head. But on the 4th day Malloy stumbled into the bar. Tough Tony grew impatient, suggesting someone simply shoot Malloy in the head, but Murphy recommended a more subtle solution, exchanging Malloy's whiskey and gin with shots of wood alcohol. Drinks containing just 4% wood alcohol could cause blindness, and by 1929 more than 50,000 people nationwide had died from the effects of impure alcohol. They would serve Malloy not shots tainted with wood alcohol, but wood alcohol straight up. Marino thought it a brilliant plan, declaring he would give all of the drink he wants, and let him drink himself to death. Kriesberg allowed a rare display of enthusiasm. Yeah, he added, feed him wood alcohol cocktails and see what happens. Murphy bought a few 10-cent cans of wood alcohol at a nearby paint shop and carried them back in a brown paper bag. He served Malloy shots of cheap whiskey to get him feeling good, and then made the switch. The gang watched, rapt, as Malloy downed several shots and kept asking for more, displaying no physical symptoms other than those typical of inebriation. He didn't know that what he was drinking was wood alcohol, and what he didn't know apparently didn't hurt him. He drank all the wood alcohol he was given and came back for more. Night after night the scene repeated itself, with Malloy drinking shots of wood alcohol as fast as Murphy poured them, until the night he crumpled without warning to the floor. The gang fell silent, staring at the jumbled heap by their feet. Pasqua knelt by Malloy's body, feeling the neck for a pulse, lowering his ear to the mouth. The man's breath was slow and labored. They decided to wait, watching the sluggish rise and fall of his chest. Any minute now. Finally, there was a long, jagged breath, the death rattle. But then Malloy began to snore. He awakened some hours later, rubbed his eyes, and said, "Gimme some of the old regular, me lade." The plot to kill Michael Malloy was becoming cost prohibitive. The open bar tab, the cans of wood alcohol, and the monthly insurance premiums all added up. Marino fretted that his speakeasy would go bankrupt. Tough Tony once again advocated brute force, but Pasqua had another idea. Malloy had a well-known taste for seafood. Why not drop some oysters in denatured alcohol, let them soak for a few days, and serve them while Malloy imbibed? Alcohol taken during a meal of oysters, Pasqua was quoted as saying, will almost invariably cause acute indigestion, for the oysters tend to remain preserved. As planned, Malloy ate them one by one, savoring each bite, and washed them down with wood alcohol. Marino, Pasqua and the rest played pinochle and waited, but Malloy merely licked his fingers and belched. At this point killing Michael Malloy was just as much about pride as about a payoff, they all griped. That would be split among too many conspirators. Murphy tried next. He let a tin of sardines rot for several days, mixed in some shrapnel, slathered the concoction between pieces of bread, and served Malloy the sandwich. Any minute, they thought, the metal would start slashing through his organs. Instead, Malloy finished his tin sandwich and asked for another. The gang called an emergency meeting. They didn't know what to make of this Rasputin of the Bronx. Marino recalled his success with Mabel Carlson and suggested that they ice Malloy down and leave him outside overnight. That evening Marino and Pasqua tossed Malloy into the back seat of Pasqua's roadster, drove in silence to Crotona Park, and lugged the unconscious man through heaps of snow. After depositing him on a park bench, they stripped off his shirt and dumped bottles of water on his chest and head. Malloy never stirred. When Marino arrived at his speakeasy the following day, he found Malloy's half-frozen form in the basement. Somehow Malloy had trekked the half-mile back and persuaded Murphy to let him in. When he came to, he complained of a wheat chill. February neared. Another insurance payment was due. One of the gang, John McNally, wanted to run Malloy over with a car. Tin-Ear Smith was skeptical, but Marino, Pasqua, Murphy and Kriesberg were intrigued. John Miglione offered the services of a cab driver friend named Harry Green, whose cut from the insurance money would total $150. They all piled into Green's cab, a drunken Malloy strewn across their feet. Green drove a few blocks and stopped. Bostone and Murphy dragged Malloy down the road, holding him up, crucifixion style, by his outstretched arms. Green gunned the engine. Everyone braced. From the corner of his eye, Miglione saw a quick flash of light. The cab lurched to a halt. Green determined it had just been a woman turning on the light in her room, and he prepared for another go. Malloy managed to leap out of the way not once, but twice. On the third attempt Green raced toward Malloy at 50 miles per hour. Miglione watched through split fingers. With every second Malloy loomed larger through the windshield. 2 thuds, one loud and one soft, the body against the hood, and then dropping to the ground. For good measure, Green backed up over him. The gang was confident Malloy was dead, but a passing car scared them from the scene before they could confirm. It fell to Joseph Murphy, who had been cast as Nicholas Mallory's brother, to call morgues and hospitals in an attempt to locate his missing sibling. No one had any information. Nor were there any reports of a fatal accident in the newspapers. 5 days later, as Pasqua plotted to kill another anonymous drunk, any anonymous drunk, and pass him off as Nicholas Mallory, the door to Marino's speakeasy swung open and in limped a battered, bandaged Michael Malloy, looking only slightly worse than usual. What a story he had to tell, what he could remember of it, anyway. He recalled the taste of whiskey, the cold slap of night air, the glare of rushing lights. Then, blackness. Next thing he knew, he woke up in a warm bed at Fordham Hospital and wanted only to get back to the bar. On February 21, 1933, 7 months after the murder trust first convened, Michael Malloy finally died in a tenement near 168th Street, less than a mile from Marino's speakeasy. A rubber tube ran from a gas light fixture to his mouth and a towel was wrapped tightly around his face. Dr. Frank Manzella, a friend of Pasqua's, filed a phony death certificate citing lead bar pneumonia as the cause. The gang received only $800 from Metropolitan Life Insurance Company. Murphy and Marino each spent their share on a new suit. Pasqua arrived at the Prudential office confident he would collect the money from the other two policies, but the agent surprised him with a question, "When can I see the body?" Pasqua replied that he was already buried. An investigation ensued. Everyone began talking, and everyone eventually faced charges. Frank Pasqua, Tony Marino, Daniel Kriesberg and Joseph Murphy were tried and convicted of first-degree murder. Daniel Kriesberg, Anthony Marino and Frank Pasqua were all executed by electrocution on the same day on June 8, 1934, at the Sing Sing electric chair. And Joseph Murphy, who followed his collaborators to the chair on July 5th of that same year. Thank you for watching Death Row. Today's video is sponsored by Nobility.co.uk, the leading company in selling legal titles in the United Kingdom. Get a 10% discount in any purchase by mentioning Death Row.
Here in the UK, there are two types of titles. Firstly, there are peerages, which are granted by the Queen. These are not allowed to be sold. Secondly, there are manorial feudal titles. These were once based on land ownership. However, since 1925, titles have been separate from the land itself, with the introduction of the Law of Property Act 1925. Here is the UK government website showing what titles are legal. Manorial feudal titles are regarded as inheritable property, which any nationality worldwide can purchase. Companies selling seated titles or titles with tiny plots of land whilst sounding good are in fact by law novelty souvenirs, not real, genuine titles. Legally approved by UK trading standards, barristers and a UK law lord, no other company has a law lord ruling, 100% legal and proper. You can add your title to passports, bank cards, etc. Even American and Canadian citizens can add the title to their passports on the observation page. All UK and foreign titles have passed 12 legal security checks before offering them for sale. Buy with confidence from the #1 title broker in the world, established 1996. Compliant with Privacy Data Protection Act 2018, the Honours Prevention and Abuses Act and Law of Property Act 1925. All processed through UK solicitors. Strictly private and confidential.